helpful here in helping, assisting me a little bit, and she's very good, and she is first in actually gonna do a personal demonstration. Some of it is PowerPoint, and Sharon is going to do, Sharon Bill, she's going to demonstrate. Do you need the microphone too, and you want me to talk? No, I'm just kidding. Oh, you have? Oh, yeah, that goes to show you how advanced Sharon is, and I'll keep quiet. Danke, Sharon, you're on.
All right. So when we first talked about doing this program, I don't do a lot of baking, so I thought I would look in our Grow cookbook, our Family Heritage Recipe book, and I found a recipe with a good story. So this is one that was submitted by Arlene Dexheimer Maston, and it's called My Mother's Sour Cream Cookies. So here's the story she put in there. My mother made these cookies for at least 50 years for the family, and about 30 of those in her bakery in Wimbledon, North Dakota. Particularly at Christmas time, she would start baking batch after batch to store in coffee cans and other tin containers and put them out of sight in an outdoor storage building. She never could figure out why some of the containers were missing a third or half of what she put in them. These cookies filled with cooked prunes or apricots were her favorite, and they only improved with age. When she made them for the bakery, she had to take orders before Thanksgiving so everyone could get a chance to get some for the holidays. My mother never wanted to share this recipe, so I will probably be in trouble, but it would be a shame to lose this one. So I made the batter up ahead of time because I wasn't going to go through all that, but her recipe is 2 cups sugar, 1 cup butter, no substitute, 3 eggs, 1 tablespoon vanilla, 1 cup sour cream, 1 scant teaspoon each of baking soda and salt dissolved in sour cream. And here's where you want a bigger container to put that sour cream in, because the baking soda reacts with the acid in the sour cream and it starts sort of foaming, so make sure your cup's big enough. And then 4½ cups flour, the Dakota made is the best, and 2 teaspoons baking powder. So that's the recipe, and I'm going to skip to rolling it out. Now this is a very soft dough, so they recommend you refrigerate it, which I did. I made it yesterday. I've tried it out a couple times, and it says to use as little flour as possible, but mine always stick, so I use lots of flour and I brush it off with a pastry brush. So that's my tip. Probably a lot of other people have a better way of doing this, but like I said, I'm not a baker. And if other people have suggestions about how to do stuff like this,
I think by the time you're done today, you will be the perfect baker.
well, we'll see. So it says to roll out so that it's a 1/4 inch thick. And then the recipe talked about doing 3-inch thick cookies. Of course, this is very firm now because it's been in the refrigerator.
You need some help, Sharon?
She needs clean hands.
Oh, okay.
She has clean hands.
Okay.
Yeah. More flour.
We'll have to get Dakota-made flour.
Yeah. Yeah, this is just regular Fred Meyer unbleached, all-purpose flour. And I'm not going to do the whole thing because that would just be a long time. So, and I did make some, so there are some that if you want to sample now, you can. We'll pass them around. You can either do the flat cookie without filling, or these have apricot in them, so if anybody's interested, there's more in the back too, but you can pass them around, take a sample, or just pass them around to show what they look like. they're a very soft cookie, and so I'm going to make the filled ones. And I'm using this, it's about 2.5 inches, and just cutting them out with that.
Sharon, do you take orders?
Do I take orders? Like I said, I'm not a baker. See, already I made a mistake.
Ah, the little corner cut off.
Yeah, cut off the corner.
Here I was getting out my credit card, ready to
No, that's not me. Even though I'm retired and have time to do this, I don't spend a lot of time. So, this is where I take my pastry brush and brush off all of the excess. And I'm going to put it on, you can just use a baking sheet. I'm going to put it on the parchment paper, just because that's easy to do. And these ones I'm going to fill with apricot. So I got my stewed apricot. I took some dried non-sulfured apricots and stewed them with a little sugar on the stove, and I'm going to put just a little dab in the middle. And in order to seal the top to the bottom, I'm going to take some water and dip my finger in it and brush it around the edge of the cookie. And I'm also going to do that with the top. Thank you, Joni. And that way it'll be a good seal, so I'm going to press it down, and I know that you can't all see from way back where you are. I'm sure a lot of you have done this many times. You want to make sure that it's sealed so that none of the apricot filling comes out while it's being baked. And if you notice the sides that are going around, they're big, so they do expand. So you want to make sure that you give them a little space when you make them and bake them. They go into a 350-degree oven for 10 to 12 minutes.
Is that centigrade or Fahrenheit?
That is American. Fahrenheit. I think that would be, I don't know what it would be.
Petrified with centigrade.
Yeah. So that's that demo. My other one, I need to turn back up my oil, but get it hot. So are there any questions about these cookies, or does anybody have suggestions on how to roll sticky dough out without it sticking? Jane? No?
Did you just, when you put the bar on your rolling pin, did you put it all the way around it?
I tried to.
Because you take your hand, you actually put your hand in the flour and just go back and forth on your rolling pin.
Yeah, and it's still stuck. I guess you can use, fancy marble ones that you put in the cold, right? And then they're cold and things don't stick so much. No, they don't work? Okay. I'll stick to my old hand-me-down rolling pin.
Those old wooden rolling pins are the best.
Yeah, except I think my husband used it to bash on something, so there's some dents in it. Sort of like sewing scissors, never use them on anything but a cloth, right? All right. So I'll have to do the rest of these at home.
Actually, I saw rolling pins used for when the husband comes back late, and I noticed that 10 o'clock it was one size, 11 o'clock was a bigger size, and 12 o'clock was a big size. So the poor guy better come home on time.
What's that? Did you try one? Oh, good. I'm glad that it was good.
That you were describing.
That's
Rolling pin
exciting.
was right behind the door.
And one of the things my mom told me is if you want to keep cookies soft, you can put a slice of apple in with them, and it'll help keep it that way. I guess you just don't want to put the apple on the cookie because then it will get.
In the cookie jar works.
What's that?
In the cookie jar works.
The cookie jar keeps them soft.
Like a slice of apple.
Oh, in the cookie jar. Nice. Okay. Sorry. Any other questions, comments on sour cream cookies from North Dakota?
I think you did a superior job.
Yeah.
Very good.
Thank you. So the next recipe was based on the story that, everybody get the newsletter, came out end of February? There's a story in there about Easter, and Dennis, I have yours, so. And then it was, my great aunt Susie wrote about her Dakota, German, Russian Easter memories, and so this was a excerpt out of that. And she says, on Good Friday, we feasted on Schlitz Kuechlas. So I looked it up online. I couldn't find anything about Schlitz Kuechlas. What I did find was Schlitz Kuechla. Kuechla. What was it, Randy?
Schlitz
Kuechla. And so I put a little recipe in the newsletter, and it's beat 2 eggs well, then beat them into 1/2 cup sugar. Add 3/4 cup cream, 1 teaspoon vanilla, and 2 teaspoons baking powder. Add sifted flour to make a soft dough. How much is that? Well, I looked up other recipes, and so it's about 2 cups. Roll into 1/4 thickness, cut into 2.5-inch squares, slit the center, and take a corner and pull it through the slit or leave it flat. Fry in deep fat, drain on paper towel. So what I did is, since I didn't know, she didn't put the recipe in there. It says, on Good Friday, I read that part, okay. On Good Friday we feasted on Schlitz Kuechlas and stewed fruit of prunes and apricots. How we gorged. This was a treat from our normal heavy meals of meat and potatoes. Kuechlas are sort of a flat, square donut without the round hole, fried in deep fat. To this day, I continue this custom, even just for myself. Except she no longer does that because she's not with us. But so I did a search online, and North Dakota State University Heritage Collection has a place where you can search for recipes. So if you have the name of it, it will tell you what cookbook to find it in. And I just happen to have a cookbook that it was in. And there are actually a couple of recipes. The one that I put in the newsletter was the Schlitz. Can't leave that out. Kuechla, and the other ones are called, let me find them. Fasnacht Kuechla and Fatigman, and in parentheses, Fasnacht Kuechla. So it sounds like they did these on Fat Tuesday before lunch. They're using up some of their old lard, and so this is one of the treats they had. Now in my aunt's story, she said they did it on Good Friday, so that's a little different, but anyway, that was interesting to find that, so I thought I would try it, and I tried it yesterday, and they were good. Okay, my heat's going up, so it's the same as the other recipe where I need to roll it out, and this one isn't quite as soft, but I'm still going to use flour. And I need to move some of this other stuff out of the way.
There was a beer in the Portland area that you could buy years ago,
and that was called Schlitz, just kind of, so somebody had that last name. Schlitz, yeah, okay, yeah.
Sharon,
Yes.
the sour cream cookies, we have cookbooks with that recipe in it for sale.
Yep. What are they? $12.50?
$12.50.
So if you don't have one of these family heritage recipe books, they're really neat because they do have really cool stories that people wrote about what the recipe meant to them, why it's important. Okay, now I didn't say anything about putting anything on these, but I like cinnamon and sugar, so I brought some of that. Like my aunt's thing said, they use stewed apricot and prunes. Does anybody else know if they ate other things with these Schlitz? Yeah, Kuechla. Randy, say it again.
Schlitz-Kuechla.
Schlitz.
Schlitz-Kuechla.
Kuechla. Okay. Just ignore the U. Kuechla.
Yeah.
All right.
The only thing my mother put on them was powdered sugar.
Powdered sugar?
Just plain, yeah.
So these also get rolled out to 1/4 inch thickness. And already I'm sticking again.
So the Schlitz Kuechla were North Dakota, Russian, German from Russia donuts,
Yeah,
kind of.
Sounds like it.
Deep fried.
yeah. So the temperature of the oil, I'm using canola oil online. They said that's a good one that doesn't smoke. 375 Fahrenheit is the temperature. And some of these recipes they had, some of them said 5 inches big, so that's pretty big. Some of them said 2.5 inches, so it depends on what size you want. So I just cut, and like I said, some people tuck one end in. I tried to do that, and it just fell apart. So my aunt, she talked about just cutting a slit in it and putting it in the pan. So we're doing flat ones today.
You're skipping the Schlitz. Okay.
Oh, I forgot. See, good thing you're here to keep an eye on me, Audie.
We know what some of those words mean.
Yeah. There it goes. And you cook them till they're golden. You can tell on the edges, and then you can then flip them over and cook the other side. Can you hear it?
I have a question for Randy. Randy, a lot of times what's used for filling from the Dakotas is because what can be grown there. So these two fruits would be grown there, they would thrive and preserve them and
They didn't grow fruit there.
like
No, it was dried fruit from the store.
Yeah, that would be their
The only
alternative.
fruit they had on the prairie was choke cherries.
Yeah.
That was it.
Hard to come by fruit. What about in Germany then? I mean, what the origins?
We didn't know.
Yeah, I never did
Yeah, we
either.
didn't know.
So they would have
One of those
moisture.
fruits.
Yes, there you go. That was more respectful.
Didn't they have plums in the
No.
plums too? Like
Yeah, they had
wild ones?
plums and choke cherries, and there's the little.
Newer word, newer custom.
How new. Her daughter's between 1870 and 1875. So, is that used in Germany?
ones I've seen online, they tuck each end through so that there's a little twist in it, but like I said, these are gonna fall apart, so.
It's like my name was Joe Alki, so just a joke, much faster.
Then you drain them on paper towel,
Especially after World War II.
powdered sugar or sugar and cinnamon, whatever you like, plain.
Even though my Oma were buried in Brazil, I never saw them, but that's what we call them.
So that's my demo. Whoever's next are you demoing or are you just doing the? Okay, so I'm gonna sort of go to the side here and.
Is that cinnamon?
Cinnamon and sugar, yeah.
Yeah, Dankeschön, Sharon. She's going to be an apprenticed baker at Deutsche Bäcker. That's the way the Germans say baker. Bäcker. Deutsche Bäcker in a couple of years' time. I think she's on her way.
Never.
Very, sehr gut
I
gemacht.
don't think so.
Sehr gut gemacht. It's done very well. I'm going to see if I can get this computer warmed up. You know, it was very, very good in demonstrating it and going through all that effort and preparation beforehand too. So very good. Jane Radke is going to be next, and she, I'll let her talk here, but I'm just introducing her. And the Radke family and our family, they were the best of friends already in Latvia. Then, as World War II started, then they were best of friends in central Poland, occupying Polish land. They were farmers too. My parents were farmers. Then they fled. They were fortunate too to get out of there, out of East Europe, out of Poland, the western part of Poland, to West Germany. And then they were really close in West Germany with us. And then they came to Oregon City.
And you followed.
Yeah, and we followed, and they gave me directions when I was, when my twin brother, who's right here, Harry, or Harry in Deutsch.
Harry Rudy.
Harry Rudy,
Thank
yes. And we were 12, and he and I were totally lost in Oregon City first day in junior high. And we stumbled onto the Radkes, and they said, 5 more blocks down on Center Street, that's where our sister is. And we lived with our sister for 2 years. And her daughter is Brigitte and Brett. They came here today, my niece. And Brigitte was a little girl when we came over and couldn't speak English, but the Radkes showed us 5 more blocks down there. So
Brigitte was born in Germany.
yeah, that is right. And so the Radkes have always been very close friends of ours. And so Jane, I'll get this computer going. I'll get the microphone, and I'll see if we can do this PowerPoint presentation.
Okay.
Do you want something?
I'll just leave this right here for now, unless I have a table or something to set it on. Is there
Grab table?
another table here?
Can we grab this table?
Sure. Let me get my. Let me grab the agenda just in case I could.
Yeah.
Need to stay on topic. Okay, let's see if I can get this computer running. Hey, it's there. Hey, there it is.
Okay, this picture is, yesterday
Hold,
we...
you get the microphone. I'll work the PowerPoint.
Okay. Oh, on the road. All right, yesterday we had family get together to make this because this is an all-day job. It is time-consuming. As you can see here, the first picture there is my granddaughter. Some of you should know Nikki. She was here about 4 years ago and won a scholarship through the Rose Heritage Foundation. And Roger accepted her scholarship for her because we did not go back. And that is her son, and he's now 2.5. Yeah, that was last year. So he helped last year, and so he helped again this year. give him a little piece of dough on the rolling pin and he's fun. More dough all over the floor, all over him. Okay, you want to go on to the next picture?
Yeah.
In the center there's what they look like, and then you can see him, he's here on the... Nikki said I should bring all of my utensils here. When I had 8 cookie sheets and 4 or 5 rolling pins and all this other stuff, I wasn't going to bring everything in. I think you can pretty much guess what's going on here. I did bring some of the recipes along, so any of you who would like to have a recipe, we'll pass it out here. Like I said, this is we start the night before cutting the bacon and the ham together and filling this pan full. You got it?
Yeah.
Okay, this is the ingredients of the dough. You can go on to the next one. I'll pass out the recipe and you can get it.
So you want the next one?
Go on to the next one. There you go. And it's the utensils. You can see the cookie cutters, dough cutters, glasses, whatever you can have that's around that will cut will be fine. We generally have this, make the dough in this pan here, this big pan. And I set it out on this dough and then get it working together. And then I put it in a chair with a blanket over the top to keep it warm so it raises. It takes about 2 hours. And as I started to say, the night before we cook, we cut our bacon and the ham and put it in here, season it with cracked pepper, and let it set overnight. And the next morning we peel the onions and chop them real fine, and you put them in a frying pan. You want to go with the next?
Yep.
There's the yeast. Sets it. Go to the next one, and then we set, the yeast takes a couple of teaspoons, or tablespoons of yeast and a couple of tablespoons of sugar and about a cup of, or half a cup of hot water to make it so that it gets nice and foamy. Okay.
Next one.
Next one. There's the dough. I'm mixing the dough. There's the onions. We're cutting the onions. They're mixed the next day. We cook the onions in a frying pan to just not so that they're cooked brown. You just simmer them really low heat till you cook the juice out of your onions. If you've left the juice in there, your Speckkuchen will be really soggy. So we cook it and then I mix the warm onions into the meat mixture. And when we have the dough risen and the mixture all done, we're ready to, you want to show the next picture? That's the dough that we're cutting, it's raising. What's the next one? There, we're all cutting this different places, and see there's Nicky with the Jace. He's learning how to make Speckkuchen. He eats more than he made. Okay. And this one here with the arrow, Nicky put this one on. This is Opa's job. He makes them so they split. Those are the ones you get to eat right away.
Nice.
Nice. See, this is what you're not supposed to do. Okay, the next one.
Good demonstration, Court.
Well, when we do this, like I said, it's an all-day job. We generally have soup for lunch. The Speckkuchen goes with the lunch. And any that are broken are the ones we get to eat when we're having lunch. So he makes sure that there's always a lot of them. There's Jason, Kurt and I, and that's our daughter Renee, the grandma to the Jace. And we're making Speckkuchen there. Next.
Yeah, and it's amazing, and Kurt is assisting there.
Oh yes, that's been his job since his mother. Now his mother, when we started making this, she would grab a 10-pound sack of flour and start pouring it in there. She never measured or weighed anything. She just started throwing in a pinch of this and a handful of that, and half a sack of this, and I had to stand there 3 or 4 times watching her to measure till I finally got my recipes.
Now, what are those things called?
Speckkuchen.
Speckkuchen.
Speckkuchen is bacon cakes, basically, translate. There's pictures of all of us there. And this picture right here, this is the newest Speckkuchen maker. That's Nikki's newest one. She's 6 months old. Yeah.
Should clarify, you know, with Dennis's question, this is actually a Latvian dish, yeah. And the Ratties, as I mentioned before, the Ratties lived in Latvia, and they were very close friends in Latvia, and we were in Latvia, and besides being a favorite Ratti dish, it was the same thing in our family too, the Speckkuchen, but it's an original Latvian dish.
Kurt told me yesterday that his mother brought this from Ukraine to Latvia, to Poland, to Germany, to the U.S. So this has been going around.
Yeah, and it could very well be, but I just know that there was a Latvian family that I knew really well. I lived real close when we were lost in Oregon City by the Rackies, and this was a Latvian family, and I just happened to go by one day, and their son was a little bit older than us, and they invited me in, and we had Speckkuchen. So I always thought, hey, this is really a Latvian dish, not Germans from Ukraine brought it to Latvia.
And this is something that the Racki family makes for special occasions, birthdays, weddings, anniversaries, funerals, you know, when we all get together. And in our family, we make it twice a year because it is so time consuming. And we divide them up and put some, the kids take them home when they help baking. The rest go in the freezer for when we want them throughout the year. And then Kurt was telling me I had to warm these up. That's the best when they're warmed up. And he wants a shot of whatever he's drinking with it. But I'm not going to warm them up for you. You have to imagine that they just came fresh out of the oven. Okay. You want to go on to the next picture there? There's what they look like when they come right out of the oven. That's it. And now, if you have any questions, I'm going to take one, pass them around.
When you if you freeze them, then you reheat them in the oven?
Yes, I take them out of the freezer. I put them in a plastic bag like this. So there's maybe about 3 or 4 dozen in here. And then I have 4 or 5 of these in the freezer. So when I take them out, I just bring them out like this, lay them on the counter for a little while, and then stick them in the little oven and just warm them up.
So the recipe makes about, how many did you say?
That recipe that I have right here, it makes about 300. I only halved the recipe for this week for today. So it's like I said, it's time consuming. We start at 9 o'clock in the morning, then get through until about 6 in the evening. By the time we clean up and get everything back, and kitchen back in order. Any other questions?
Break the word into, what is speck?
Bacon.
Speck in German is bacon. Yeah. And Kuchen is cake.
Cake.
It's a generic term for cake.
Let me explain something. Give me.
Okay.
Kurt is going to say which German schnapps goes best with this. Or wine.
There is a little explanation necessary. The Hartwell's called Speckrauschen. And the statement is to the different part of the family. The red is called Speckkuchen.
Where does Rauschen come from?
Let's
see if Kurt knows it. If not, we ask for the nod.
They're also known as pierogi. The Russians call pierogi. You buy them in Latvia, they're pierogi. In Latvia, you buy them in the grocery store shelf.
Kurt might have a point. The pierogies are made in Poland and they have cottage cheese inside. But But pierogies are boiled and versus these are
potato
baked in
dough.
the oven. Pierogies are boiled in the oven.
so it's different. But anyway,
Potatoes.
Speckrauschen. Renate.
Yeah.
Rauschen. What's it in German? Kuchen. Rauschen.
That is a word that comes from the Kurland area of Latvia.
There. Okay. And I heard Speckrauschen, well, in our family, but we always called it just Speckkuchen, you know. Just
When we,
baking cake.
I don't want to talk over you, but when we used to get together and different members of the family, the old timers would offer to bring a bowl of these, and then there would always be the contest who made the best Speckrauschen, and I always prefer the ones that my mother made.
No, they should really be warmed.
Yeah, they have.
Oh, they're still good.
They're still good. They're fresh. The best right when they come out of the oven with a bowl of soup or
What
something.
this is meant for in the cold evenings in Eastern Europe, the men would get together, play cards, the women would make Speckkuchen, and then they'd have the vodka ready, and that made the meal for the evening.
You want it?
So I didn't bring any vodka. I got a bottle out in the car if anybody would like to try some later on with some vodka. That's when they're best. Right, Brigitte?
I got it clean. They're great, no matter how you.
You see, this is open. This is what we did for lunch yesterday.
Yeah, those are mine.
It's on the program.
Okay, Adi,
Thank you, Jane.
kannst zurückhaben.
Danke, danke schön, wunderbar. And another good German positive word is ausgezeichnet, outstanding. Yeah, thank you. And like I said, that's a dish between the Hartweiler and the Rathjes families that we've enjoyed numerous times, with or without schnapps. Yeah, they taste good either way. And there's some variety too. You know, everybody makes them a little bit
Can I
different.
make, the Russians down in Woodburn put this with sauerkraut or they put it with fish.
Okay, put sauerkraut in
Yeah.
and put fish in. The way we were used to, bacon and onions was the ingredient. Even the Latvian family that I talked about in Oregon City, they tasted just the same, bacon and onions inside. Then the other, one of the famous, these are egg pancakes. Now the French get all the credit, not all the credit, but they get quite a bit of the credit because they're called crepes. But I tell you, everywhere in Northern Europe, Scandinavia, Germany, France, and other places, well, I tell you, Barbara and I were on a Russian cruise from St. Petersburg to Moscow. Every morning we had Eierpfannkuchen, or crepes, or egg pancakes. And these Russians served that on every day. And I'll mention one thing. I was just talking to Brigitte last night. One day I couldn't believe it. Well, I'll finish two things. And Vinny is waiting here to one more thing. Ach du lieber. Real fast. I'm going to lose my train of thought. But on the strip, so every morning it was crepes, Eierpfannkuchen, egg pancakes. And then one morning, they had a little different. They were smaller and they were raised. And that was exactly what our mother used to make, you know. So I asked these Russians, hey, you know, how do you make these? And they said they skip on the egg and they put flour in it, and with what makes flour?
Bacon powder.
Yeast.
Oh, yeast.
how do you say yeast in Deutsch? Hefe, yeah. You're right, Joe. Joe knows.
Apricot.
Hefekuchen, yeah. And so just a little bit of egg, but mainly flour and yeast, and they're raised and small and they're tasty because they're fried. And so the Russians had that, and then I said, okay, I'll stop. We need it next. Then I said, hey, my mother, in our family, this was just one of the main best dishes. It's a Ukrainian, these Russians told me. I said these big potato dumplings that were filled with not cottage cheese but curd, and huge dumplings, and then they were boiled till they came to the top, and then you could eat them with sour cream or bacon bits, and then the next day they were still good because you could cut them in half and fry them, and they knew right away what it was. I don't have the Russian name, but it was from Ukraine. And so, like Kurt says, this stuff comes from different places and different ways of making food. Okay, now getting back to crepes. Vinita is the one that makes them very good. Just super, and I just had them about 2 weeks ago down in Kaiser is where they live. And Vinita, you want to come up here and we'll go through this?
Okay.
Or you can stand there and you can just talk, and I'll go through the slides.
You take the microphone. I'll talk.
Can you
Real loud.
Okay. Yeah.
I had to. I was the first American into the German family.
Shit was good.
She broke the ice. First American wife. There were 6 of us, and so she had to put up with all of the German influence anyway, and survived. Stubborn Germans, yeah. Okay, tell them that sei ruhig and go ahead.
First of all, it's a very easy recipe. They say crepes, and I've never tried crepes before, but
There's some people I can't hear.
Speak up, Anita, like you do at home. Thank you.
but it's such an easy recipe. I have it written down.
I got it here for you. Here's the recipe.
Now this is just for 4 individual ones, not people, the crepe itself, for the Eierpfannkuchen. But it was 4 eggs and 2 cups of milk and 3/4 cup of flour, and you mix this. With me, I use the hand egg beater, but you can use the mixer, whatever you want to use. Just make sure that the flour is mixed in there good, and it's a real runny batter. You'll think, oh no, it needs more flour. No, it doesn't. And you put it, my frying pan is about, the bottom of it is about this big around. Is that about an 1/8 inch or something like that anyway? I pour it in, and it's runny. You swear that it will never be able to turn it, but you do. You let it brown on one side, and when you go to turn it, just remember, it's not easy. Because it is very, very flimsy is the word I would use, but anyway, and you just brown it on one side and brown it on the other, and it doesn't take long. I put it in the plate, and you can either put syrup on it. I prefer powdered sugar. Harry likes syrup on his, and you can roll them or you can leave it flat. I roll it and then cut it, and eat it, and it's very good and it's very filling. But I just did the small recipe. You can double it, you can do whatever for however many you want. But it makes a good breakfast. In our case, it makes good dinner too. Whenever we want to eat it. But it's very, very good, and it's one of the things that there was no recipe for when I went to learn how to cook. My sister-in-law said, you have to come over and we can show you how to do it. And that's how I learned. And the same with the sauerkraut. I couldn't give you a recipe for that because I just know how to do it, but I don't know how to tell anybody else how to do it. And that's basically all there is to it.
Duncan, I've got a couple of pictures, and I don't know how to make any of these things. I just know what tastes good, and so thank you, Vanita, for sharing that with us. I was going to say number 6. You fry this with butter, margarine, or you can use oil. But,
I'm so sorry, just what you prefer to use. I prefer butter, but you can use oil, you can use lard, you can use anything that's oily. And margarine, but I prefer butter myself. And it really turns out well.
And then because these are so thin, use a medium setting, and I think that's.
Oh, thank you, Adi. I didn't even look at that.
Yeah. No, it's and I'll show it. There's a couple of pictures of what they look like. In Portland, they used to have 2 places where you could get these crepes or Eierpfannkuchen in German. It's not just French. Remember, it's Germans make these things too. Scandinavian. Oh, I said that already. Anyway, there's 2 places in Portland that used to be, and I forgot the name already. The big restaurant at the bottom of Burnside, coming down the hill. I think it was a Swiss guy that made these things in huge, big plates. Say that again. No, it wasn't the This was on the west side, from the hillside.
Henry Keeler.
Oh, yeah, right.
Henry
Teeler.
Yeah. Teeler, yeah. And I think he was.
German type.
Yeah, I think he was Swiss, but he could. The name is German, or German. But he knew how to make these crepes. They were just great and big. He made them a big size, so you ate those, you were totally full. And then the only other place is the International Pancake House, and there's only one left here in Portland. I know where it is because my wife and I we've gone, and she liked them too. It's on close to Foster and 82nd. That's the only one, an International Pancake House, and they make them just like this.
Do you know Sailor's Restaurant or Siler's?
I don't. Sailor's, yeah. And they make them too, Dennis?
Well, they make German Russian.
The thing, and we ate these, and I compare them with the American pancakes, but that's my taste and so forth. The American pancakes are full of air, and after a little bit, then you're hungry again. And plus, these taste much better, have more eggs. And anyway, so I much prefer these. There's 2 pictures here. So just to show you what they look like, you can see how thin they are. Here they stacked up. It looks like there's about 3, 4, 5 of them. And of course, you can eat these with fruit, not just syrup. And then one more picture. I was going to say something here. These are rolled up ones, and some people put cottage cheese inside, or you can put some other. Yeah, you can probably put some other filling in it too if you want to. Anyway, so either eat them flat or rolls. Okay. Renata, this next one I'm going to go through pretty fast, and then Renata is going to finish up. And my brother Leo was going to do Pflaumenkuchen, which means plum cake, but plum sheet cakes, and he figured it out really how to make them really well, especially for one of my brothers and doing cooking. Our mother did the cooking. We didn't touch, didn't try that very much, but he's perfected that. But he's in Palm Springs. They were going to send me the recipe, but email-wise, they didn't make it. So I was yesterday there's some information on a winery, this is a German baker that had a bakery in Canby. His name is Josef Fleischmann. I didn't even get to know his last name, Fleischmann, yesterday. And a friend of mine took me there. What a great winery, a big place and all of that. He's 85 and he had a sense of humor, and I talked to Josef, and like I said, an apprenticed baker in Germany. Roger has a question.
Well, I think everybody's talking about all these great places.
Yeah.
Could we give a list of them?
A list of them and so forth? Okay, Sharon,
I think Vivian has a book that has some stuff, so if it's not in her book.
Okay. Anyway,
Jackie has it.
yeah. Anyway, that's a good suggestion that we provide some of this stuff. There's a handout for this Joseph winery, but he's specializing now, not baking. He's through with being in the bakery now. He's got a big winery. This is close to Aurora, and he's got a wine tasting in Aurora. A little building probably was built by some Germans. They had a lot of Germans in Aurora. And then he's a little bit further out, and it's got this big wine raising, grow their own grapes, and then they make this wine. And anyway, so this friend took me there in order to find out how to do the torte, and because he's an apprentice baker, baked in Bodensee by the Rhine, and he was on a trip, and he said, "Here's a couple of cookbooks here. You figure it out." And I looked at in German. I have one of them here, and now I promised that I would get this book back, so don't take this home with you because I'll be in big trouble. But I'll pass this on. I have a page in here, a whole series of, and what we were after is Torte. Now, that's a real German specialty, a Torte, and it's only I think apprentice bakers know how to make that. Multi-layered cakes, and Brigitte's father, he was, in our family, he was a baker, and he made this only on special occasions. It took him a whole day to make them. If you can pass that on. And the other thing you'll see is how good Germans are with, and I'm not bragging, I'm just saying how good they are with pastry and breads and so forth, and they were apprenticed. It took them years, to learn all this stuff, learn how to.
I think you're really talking about multi-layers for Pflaumenkuchen. Pflaumenkuchen is also just simply a yeast-raised dough on the cookie sheet, and you need Italian prunes. You cannot use any of them.
Brooks prunes are really good on that.
Italian prunes.
Yeah.
But torte is something totally different. It's a different base altogether.
And I'm not trying to say they're the same. It's actually totally different. One's a sheet cake, and this torte is a multi-layered cake with a buttercream cover, and also in the layers. So it's a real rich type of cake. I'll digress one more thing. In the 54, when we came to the United States, they had Betty Crocker cake, and even though we were poor and didn't have anything, we knew what good pastry is like and what a torte is like. And then the Betty Crocker cake was covered with sugar frosting. And after a couple of days, you needed a jackhammer in order to get through this thing. And then once you got through the frosting that turned into rock almost, and I'm exaggerating, but just to make the point, inside you had the dough, which by that time was so dry that you almost choked on it. And in 54, after the war, we came to America and said, what type of cakes do they do here? Because you look at this torte that I'm going to show you a little bit, and that's what they had already had in the 50s, even before World War II. They were making multi-layered buttercream frosting that never dried out or anything, but it was really rich. That's why Germans had all the beer bellies, drinking and eating chocolate. That's how they got it. Anyway, okay. So I'm going to go real fast. Renata is waiting, and so let me see. I think there's a slideshow here. I can do this. But I don't know how to start it. Okay. So next one. Come on. There. Okay. So I looked it up in the book, and then I went on Google, and I found an English translation. So I'm going to go through these ingredients and stuff, and just show you the pictures a little bit. Anyway. And here, this is Fritz Pagel. That's Brigitte's father. And so we learned, Harry and I he was courting our sister. We were 8, 9, 10, and he brought these pieces of torte when he was courting our sister. And boy, he was our favorite, I tell you that.
And marshmallows.
And marshmallows.
Yeah.
And forget the marshmallows. I like the torte. here's the dough recipe. I'm going to go fast. I'm just filling in for Leo, my brother that didn't do the Pfannkuchen. And then here's the key for Torte. Actually, this baker, this Joseph, he said it's the dough itself. To me, it's the cream, the buttered cream that goes on top and around and in the layers. Plus, you use fruit in between too. If you have marmalade or something like that, any fruit filling they put in between, so you could really juice it up. Brittle topping. This particular torte, they put some nut stuff on top anyway. And as I said, I got this from Google. And then baking instruction, and that's the dough. Okay. The dough is it's not like Betty Crocker. The dough is like a pound cake, moist. It doesn't dry out. It's more of a heavier dough. Just the dough itself I'm talking about. Okay, so here you get the dough, baking instructions. Here's making the buttercream frosting a little bit more, how to mix it up and make it, I guess, and then put it on. Final steps in making the finished torte. So you have 3 horizontal layers at least. Some of the tortes, they've had more layers. It depends on how much stuff you want to put. Here, there's the finished product. And again, this is cream, doesn't dry out, moist dough. In between the layers. I think I got one more picture here where you see what the layers look like. And this is just one type of torte. They got a dozen different types. I think there's the black, the chocolate, black forest torte. Everybody's heard those, but actually, I didn't like chocolate much. I like more the lighter vanilla stuff.
I think in the future the technology is going so fast that in the future we can probably go to the screen, cut a piece of cake off or torte off, and everybody can have a piece.
Yeah, I wish that future would be here already, and I could back up my this talk here. I think that was the last one. So if not, I think you're next. Any questions on this? Yeah, that was the last one. And this particular torte was called Frankfurter Kranz. Kranz means a round circle, and they used a bunt to form it. Actually, on this one, they must have used a different form because there's no hollow in the middle. But so anyway, and I'm not used to a hollow. It was just solid, just like this. Is when Brigitte's father, Fritz, made that. Okay, any question on that? Thank you. I was working on this. I want you to feel really sorry for me. I was working on this last night, putting this together, getting it from Google and putting it in the PowerPoint. Okay, Renate is going to go next. Do you want das Mikrofon? Möchtest du ein Mikrofon haben? Frage ist mein German.
Kann, glaube ich, laut genug.
Du bist laut genug. She's loud enough, she said. Okay.
Are there any German bakeries around that you would recommend, or restaurants?
Yeah, that's a good. I did see. I forget the German word as I was coming on Gleason. It was a shortcut that Harry got lost, but I gave him the wrong side street, so he was on 57th and going to Vancouver. But anyway, Feta or something like that.
The last one was Beaverton Bakery.
Oh yeah,
Beaverton Bakery has closed.
It's closed, yeah. So there's hardly any, especially very good ones. I mean, I go to the Edelweiss for sausages and all of that, and they have big German kind of bakery things, but it all doesn't look very authentic, and if you don't believe me, again, look at the book, and you can see how good they are in pastry.
Okay. But on Powell and 11th, there's a German restaurant, and they make on Powell and 30 and 11th, there's a restaurant, and they make actually all kinds of German torts on request. I used to have the German chocolate, Schwarzwälder Black Forest cherry torte made, or a special mocha torte with rum. I mean, they make some fun, but now way back here, 30 years ago, it was like $20. Now, I think it costs $45, you know, for it. But because it's so expensive, but it's just unique. What was it?
What's the name of the restaurant? You said?
Boy, I don't know if it is. I can't remember. It's right off 11th and Powell, directly south. Yeah, or 11th or 12th.
But it used to be the Berlin Inn. but
Berlin
they
Inn, I
closed.
think
They
you're
closed.
right. I think Berlin Inn. That's
He
what.
said- he
Are
said-
they still there?
No, he said it's closed.
Oh, they're closed. That's sad.
Oh, there's nothing left.
Yeah, it's just like here on Sandy, that's closed down
That's closed
too.
too.
Sad.
Yeah.
Gustav's, I guess, used to be there. Oh no, Gustav's is still there, but otherwise it's gone.
Yeah, that's what they used to be. Roger, yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The name of those restaurants, bakeries, any place that's good German food, it's gonna be sitting right here with a tent. So write these names down.
Yeah.
So we can preserve it.
Well,
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Right here.
Yeah.
We had a great time.
Yeah.
Hey,
Great.
Isn't there something in Salem, Konditorei?
Konditorei?
Yeah, Konditorei.
Yeah.
It's,
You should maybe mention that, what the German bakery in Germany is called, the Konditorei.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
in
You can say that.
Conditor Rice, that's what they call.
It's called Bäckerei und Konditorei.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Bakery is just a more normal
Bread.
bakery with rolls
They
and
have
red
also-
bread and rolls, but conditorei is something special towards basically. That's what
The
conditorei.
pastry
it's
part,
Kuchen.
The pastry or Kuchen cake, the
Yeah.
pastry part is
Conditorei.
conditorei. Bakery is making breads, you know, so there's two parts of it.
Lecken Brötchen.
And
Yeah.
Brötchen, you know, that you can't even find that in the United States anywhere. The Brötchen are these special buns that they're made in Germany, hard crusted buns inside this beautiful white dough, light dough, and Germans eat that for breakfast. I mean, I wouldn't want anything else.
Or
Those-
Yeah, exactly, you
Those,
know,
those
I-
buns,
yeah.
and they call
Or
them Brötchen,
Yeah.
a small
Special.
bread type, but and it's French bread, so that it's white bread and crusted bun, and they're just fantastic. You can't even. Here you
Yeah.
get buns that are kind of soggy and stuff like that. Those are just special, great things.
Especially if
Okay.
they're warm in the morning. When I visit my sister in Germany, in Frankfurt, I always want to have at least two, sometimes three rolls. And I just, two of them, I want to have them just as butter. I mean, they're so good. You can't get that nice crispy on the outside and then soft on the inside. They're fantastic.
Nice.
Yeah, okay.
Time-wise.
I let you talk now.
No. I was given the signal there. We gotta let you. We're shooting for 3:30 or quarter after.
No.
Okay, Renate. What you wanted?
I would love to.
Okay.
I almost started here in German with my German language. I really didn't know. I only decided that I was not going to make He Needs the Mic.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Then you can whisper and it's still loud.
He
Yeah.
doesn't have a long ears for this.
Yeah. Whisper in his ear.
I really gave it some thought, and I decided that what I knew as my recipes was out of a Germany of 60, 70 years ago, and Germany has changed. And I suddenly thought, this is ridiculous. But between meatloaf and Eierpfannkuchen and potato pancakes, what else could I offer? So I went to the library, and sure enough, they had two books about German cooking. One is called The New German Cookbook, and I said, aha, something that is more recent. And the other one is called Modern German Cooking. And I thought, I'm on the right path. So I started leafing through. The pictures are marvelous, but they resembled. I didn't want to bake, so what else can I do? And I came to a page, and a word jumped out of me. Rote Grütze. I heard, oh yeah. Literally translated, it's red grits. Just that. But it's known as berry pudding. Not named after our family, since I'm not berry. But I looked at that and I thought, this is perfect because here in Oregon we are moving into the berry season. You can pick the 3 or 4 varieties and make this pudding. They also recommend that you top it with a nice, creamy vanilla sauce. They gave the recipe for that as well. So, the next herb. I like the recipe. I like the look of it. You can pass the book around if they wanted to look what it actually looks like. Very, very nice. And so I thought, well, what do I have available? And I needed a dictionary because I knew there were cranberries. I still had cranberries in my freezer. But I didn't know the German word for cranberry. It's Preiselbeere. I had heard it, but I didn't know what it was. So, then I find that in the second book, so one book has the recipe, the other German book has actually a glossary of of German expressions with an English translation and description of what it is. So from roasting a goose, it goes to buttermilk or buttermilk pancakes. It goes to Preiselbeeren and gooseberries, it's Gänsebeeren, and so many things are literally translated. But anyhow, I thought the glossary was fabulous. And so I started, okay, so what do we do? So I had cranberries. I went and bought 2 cans of cranberry jello, I think, or jelly they call it. And started with that, heated that up, put the cranberries in, and they call it, the pudding actually calls for a pudding, but I chose a lemon flavor rather than vanilla flavor, and kept cooking and stirring, and then came the sauce. Without the sauce, it would just be cranberry. And the sauce called for, now I had doubled the recipe, but the sauce called for the single serving, 1/2 of what I brought, 8 egg yolks. All right, so I did. I made the sauce with egg yolks, not 16 but 8, and half and half, substituted half and half with full cream. I also had made an adaptation on the berry pudding. I left out the wine. The recommendation in the recipe is 1 cup of red wine and 1 cup of white wine. For our purposes today, it's not done with wine. But I have enough here to where it can go on the dessert table. Please help yourself, enjoy it. It really came out nicely. And surprisingly enough, a cranberry put into a pudding mixture is a totally different experience than cranberry sauce that we usually do here. And since they had a German Preiselbeeren, I was more reconciled to using the cranberries. And I have recipes. I made enough copies for everybody to take one home. So, let's eat, enjoy. Most of you already ate what Sharon made. But it was primarily that I was surprised about the modern cookbooks, and you can leaf through and look at pictures. The modern cookbooks, really, particularly the one that I'm passing around, totally different. It's done in small amounts. It's not the mashed potatoes, the sauerkraut, and the pork chop, or whatever they do. There's an elegance to it like we only see in restaurants. It's smaller amounts. It's done with more finesse. It's not mother's home cooking off a recipe that great-grandmother inherited. And I didn't want to do that to you today, so go to Grütze it is.
Ja, danke sehr, Renate, für for your genius way of making that grits pudding. Now, grits is different than in the southern states. Grütze, yeah, Grütze.
Stay with the term.
If you just translate that to grits,
Well-
it means it's grainy, you know, type of thing.
Okay. The berries have enough seeds to where
Seeds.
that would be gritty.
Yeah.
And I think this is where the Grütze comes from, because we
Gritty.
only know it as made with barley or something like that.
But the southern states that eat grits, that's gritty too, anyway. So, but in German it's Grütze. Good, yeah.
And explain for our families again, we call it Himmelsspeise.
Himmelsspeise is cranberries. Huh? Good.
Heavenly.
The cranberries they call
No, it's
Himmelsspeise.
any kind of raspberries.
No, nobody makes it with cranberries, that was me only.
No, Preiselbeere, that's the noodles that do.
Yeah.
Preiselbeere.
Yeah.
You get to use, probably know the
Okay, so we're going to be ready to we're going to take a break then, and is it time or
Yes, it
do we
is
have a
time.
little more time? So we're going to take a break here and then wrap things up. So there's